The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was an Anglo Irish playwright, novelist, poet, and critic. He is regarded as one of the greatest playwrights of the Victorian era. In his lifetime, he wrote 9 plays, one novel, and numerous poems, short stories, and essays. This story of the Happy Prince dwells upon the themes like social injustice, redemptive power of love, and loss of innocence. In this story, we come across a statue who at one time a real. The Happy Prince was a beautiful statue. He was covered with gold. He had sapphires for eyes and a ruby in his soul. Why did he want to part with all the gold that he had and his precious stones? High above the city on a tall column stood the statue of Happy Prince. He was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes he had 2 bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. So somewhere in a palace lived the Happy Prince. When he was alive, he was ignorant of the sufferings of the people. But once he died, his statue was erected high above the city on a tall column. He was thinly covered with thin leaves of fine gold. His eyes had 2 bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. Hilt means handle. One night there flew over the city a little swallow. His friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. Then he decided to go to Egypt too. All day long he flew, and at night time he arrived at the city. Where shall I put up? He said. I hope the town has made preparations. Then he saw the statue on the tall column. I will put up there, he cried. It is a fine position with plenty of fresh air. So he alighted just between the feet of the Happy Prince. I have a golden bedroom, he said softly to himself as he looked around, and he prepared to go to sleep. But just as he was putting his head under his wing, a large drop of water fell on him. What a curious thing! He cried. There is not a single cloud in the sky. The stars are quite clear and bright, and yet it is raining. He says. Then another drop fell. What is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off? Keep the rain off means cannot protect him from the rain. He said to himself. He murmured to himself, I must look for a good chimney pot, and he determined to fly away. But before he had opened his wings, a third drop fell, and again he looked up and saw. Ah! What did he see? The eyes of the Happy Prince were filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks. His face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with pity. Who are you? He asked. I am the Happy Prince. Why are you weeping then? Asked the swallow. You have quite drenched me. When I was alive, and had a human heart. The prince said. The statue answered, I did not know what tears were. I did not know what the sufferings was, for I lived in the palace. I enjoyed myself. I was happy there, where sorrow is not allowed to enter. My courtiers call me the happy prince, and happy indeed I was. So I lived, and so I died. I was happy when I lived, when I was alive, and I died happily. This is what he said to the swallow. And now that I am dead, they have set me up here so high that I can see the ugliness and all the misery of my city. And though my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot choose but weep. And why did Happy Prince weep? What was the reason? Because when he was alive, he lived in the palace happily. And when he died, he was erected somewhere up high in the city on the tall column, and he could see the sufferings and the misery of the people. What? Is he not solid gold? Said the swallow to himself. He was too polite to make any personal remarks. Even Swallow was surprised. Far away, continued the statue in a low musical voice. Far away, in a little street, there is a poor house. Of the windows is open, and through it I can see a woman seated at a table. Her face is thin and worn means old and wrinkled. And she has coarse red hands all pricked by the needle, for she is seamstress. Seamstress means female tailor. She works hard day and night. She is embroidering flowers on a satin gown for the loveliest of the queen's maids of honor to wear at the next court ball. In a bed in the corner of the room, her little boy is lying ill. He has a fever and is asking his mother to give him oranges. His mother has nothing to give him but river water, so he is crying, Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not bring her the ruby out of my sword hilt? My feet are fastened. Fastened means tied. My feet are fastened, the statue said, the happy prince said, to this pedestal, and I cannot move. I am waited for in Egypt, said the swallow. My friends are flying up and down in the Nile and talking to the large lotus flowers. Soon they will go to sleep. The prince asked the swallow to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. The boy is so thirsty and the mother so sad, he said. I don't think I like boys, answered the swallow. I want to go to Egypt. But the happy prince looked so sad that the little swallow was sorry. It is very cold here, he said, but he agreed to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. Next, he says, Thank you, little swallow, said the prince. The swallow picked out the great ruby from the prince's sword and flew away with it in the beak over the roofs of the town. He passed by the cathedral tower where the white marble angels were sculptured. He passed by the palace and heard the sound of dancing. A beautiful girl came out on the balcony with her lover. I hope my dress will be ready in time for the state ball, she said. I've ordered flowers to be embroidered on it, but the sea mistresses are so lazy. The princess said, He passed over the river and saw the lanterns hanging on the mast of the ships. At last he came to the poor woman's house and looked in. The boy was tossing feverishly on his bed, and the mother had fallen asleep. She was so tired. And he hopped and laid the great ruby on the table beside the woman's thimble. Thimble is actually the cap worn on finger for protection because she was the seamstress, she was the lady tailor, so she used to wear that thimble on a finger. Then he flew gently round the bed, fanning the boy's forehead with his wings. How cool I feel, said the boy. I must be getting better. And he sank into delicious slumber. Slumber means sleep. So, what have you learned from this? That the swallow finally agreed to what the happy prince told him. And on his request, he went to the seamstress' house and helped the seamstress. This is because you have done a good action, said the prince. And the little swallow Then the swallow flew back to the happy prince and told him what he had done. It is curious, he remarked, but I feel quite warm now, although it is so cold. That is because you have done a good action, said the prince. And the little swallow began to think and then fell asleep. Thinking always made him sleep. When day broke, he flew down to the river and had a bath. Tonight I go to Egypt, said the swallow, and he was in high spirits at the possibility, at the prospect of going back to Egypt. He visited all the monuments and sat a long time on top of the church steeple. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince once again. Have you any commissions for Egypt? He cried. I'm just starting. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Will you stay with me one night longer? I'm waited for in Egypt, answered the swallow. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince. Far away across the city, I see a young man in a garret. Garret means small roof. Okay, room on the roof. Small room on the roof. He is leaning over a desk covered with papers. And in the glass by his side, there's a bunch of withered means dried up. Okay, violets, blue purple flower, dried up blue purple flowers. His hair is brown and crisp, and his lips are red as pomegranate, and he has large and dreamy eyes. He's trying to finish a play for the director of the theater, but he's too cold to write anymore. There is no fire in the grate. Grate means the metal frame of the fireplace, okay? There is no fire in the grate, and hunger has made him faint. I will wait with you one night longer, said the swallow, who really had a good heart. He asked if he should take another ruby to the young playwright. Playwright means the person who writes drama. Alas, I have no ruby now, said the prince. My eyes are all that I have left. They are made of rare sapphires. Sapphires are the precious stones, which were brought out of India 1,000 years ago. He ordered the swallow to pluck out one of them and take it to the playwright. He will sell it to the jeweler and buy firewood and finish his play, he said. Dear prince, said the swallow, I cannot do that. And he began to weep. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince, do as I command you. So the swallow plucked out the prince's eyes and flew away to the young man's garret. It was easy enough to get in, as there was a hole in the roof. Through this he darted, he jumped in, and came into the room. The young man had his head buried in his hands, so he did not hear the flutter of the bird's wings. And when he looked up, he found a beautiful sapphire lying on the withered violets. I am beginning to be appreciated, he cried. This is from some great admirer. Now I can finish my play. And he looked quite happy. The next day, the swallow flew down to the harbor. He sat on the mast of a large vessel and watched the sailors working. I'm going to Egypt, cried the swallow. But nobody minded, and when the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. I have come to bid you goodbye, he cried. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince, will you not stay with me one night longer? It is winter, answered the swallow, and the snow will soon be here. In Egypt, the sun is warm on the green palm trees, and the crocodiles lie in the mud and look lazily about them. In the square below, said the happy prince, there stands a little match girl. She has let her matches fall in the gutter, and they are all spoiled. Her father will beat her if she does not bring home some money. And she is crying. She has no shoes or stockings, and her little head is bare. Pluck out my another eye and give it to her, and her father will not beat her. I will stay with you one night longer, said the swallow. But I cannot pluck out your eye. You would be quite blind then. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, said the prince, do as I command you. So he plucked out the prince's other eye and darted down with it. He swooped, swoop means fly down the match girl and slipped the jewel into the palm of her hand. What a lovely bit of glass, cried the little girl, and she ran home laughing. Then the swallow came back to the prince. You are blind now, he said, so I will stay with you always. No, little swallow, said the poor prince, you must go away to Egypt. No, I will stay with you always, said the swallow, and he slept at the prince's feet. On the next day, he sat on the prince's shoulder and told him stories of what he had seen in the strange land. Dear little swallow, said the prince, you tell me of marvelous things, but more marvelous than anything is the suffering of men and women. There is no mystery so great as misery. Misery means hardships. Fly over my city, little swallow, and tell me what you see there. So the swallow flew over the great city and saw the rich making merry in their beautiful houses, while the beggars were sitting at the gates. He flew into the dark lanes and saw the white faces of starving children looking out listlessly at the black streets. Under the archway of a bridge, two little boys were lying in each other's arms to try and keep themselves warm. How hungry we are, they said. You must not lie here, shouted the watchman, and they wandered out into the rain. Then he flew back and told the prince what he had seen. I'm covered with fine gold, said the prince. You must take it off, leaf by leaf, and give it to the poor. The living always think that gold can make them happy. So, what do we learn from this, my dear children? That we really become happy with the materialistic things that we possess. But real happiness lies in others' happiness. When we see others happy, isn't it? When see when we see others enjoying, they are happy, isn't it? In serving others, in serving humanity, in serving needy and poor. And not that happiness we get from gold or anything else. Leaf after leaf of the fine gold the swallow picked off till the happy prince looked quite dull and grey. Leaf after leaf of the fine gold he brought to the poor, and the children's faces grew rosier. They were happy, and they laughed and played in the street. We have bread now, they cried. Very important. See, the things that we possess, we must be very thankful to God for whatever we have. Just realize those people on the street begging, isn't it? Their sufferings, their hardships. Yes or no? They actually just, they sit on the street for just a bread so that they can get a bread. It's not very certain that they are going to, get 3 meals of a day even. Okay, so whatever we possess, whatever we have, whatever uh, is given to us must be taken as blessing by God, and we must be satisfied and contented with whatever he has given us, the Almighty has given us. So leaf after leaf of the fine gold he brought to the poor, and the children's faces grew rosier, and they laughed and played in the street. We have bread now, they cried. Then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. The streets looked as if they were made of silver. Everybody went about in furs, and the little boys with scarlet caps and skated on the ice. So they used that money as it was winter season. They used that money to get at least a meal of the day, clothes, isn't it? They wore scarlet caps and skated on the ice. So what more would be the blessing if you see someone happy and if you can give a smile on someone's face, isn't it? The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too well. He picked up crumbs outside the baker's door when the baker was not looking, and tried to keep himself warm by flapping his wings. But at last he knew that he was going to die. He had just enough strength to fly to the prince's shoulder once more. "Goodbye, dear prince," he murmured. "Will you let me kiss your hand?" "I'm glad that you are going to Egypt at last, little swallow," said the prince. "You have stayed too long here, but you must kiss me on the lips, for I love you." "It is not to Egypt that I am going," said the swallow. "I am going to the house of death. Death is the brother of sleep, is he not?" So finally, Swallow very well understood that his death was nearer now, and he is going to die. And he kissed the happy prince on the lips and fell down dead at his feet. At that moment, a curious crack sounded inside the statue, as if something had broken. The fact is that the leaden heart had broken right in. It suddenly was a dreadfully hard frost. Early the next morning, the mayor was walking in the square below in the company with the two councillors. As they passed the column, he looked up at the statue. "Dear me, how shabby the happy prince looks," he said. "How shabby indeed," cried the town councillors, who always agreed with the mayor, and they went up to look at it. "The ruby has fallen out of the sword. His eyes are gone, and he is golden no more," said the mayor. "In fact, he is little better than a beggar." "Little better than a beggar," said the town councillors. "And here is actually a dead bird at his feet," continued the mayor. "He must really issue a proclamation that birds are not to be allowed to die here, and the town clerk made a note of suggestion. Isn't it humorous and funny? How is it possible? So they pulled down the statue of Happy Prince as he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful. Again, a message for you, my dear children. You must be beautiful from inside, must be beautiful from heart. And if you're beautiful from heart, you will be really beautiful for others. Nothing exists permanently here in this world. Everything is transitory. Everything is transitory. So learn to respect everyone. Learn to value humanity. Okay? Now, after that, the statue of Happy Prince was pulled down. And as said, he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful. So outer beauty is not permanent. Fine? So it's your beautiful heart, your beauty from inside that matters. Okay? Said the art professor at the university. Then they melted the statue in a furnace. What a strange thing, said the overseer of the workmen at the foundry. This broken lead heart will not melt in furnace. We must throw it away. So they threw it on a dust heap where the dead swallow was also lying. Bring me the two most precious things in the city, said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bull. You have rightly chosen, said God. For in my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing forever more, and in my city of gold the happy prince shall praise me. Though their existence, extinguished from this world, but then their existence remain forever in the heart of God, in the reign of God. The bird forever existed in heaven as well as happy prince. So what did we learn today from this chapter? The happy prince. We have learned many things, my dear children. That we must always help needy. We must not focus on outer appearance, isn't it? We must value inner beauty of the person, which is very important. Whenever we get chance, we must help those needy, beggars, poor, isn't it? That's why, we are born as human beings. Thank you. I hope you like the chapter and the chapter is clear to you.